Yippee! It's Wednesday at 1 here on the Eastern Seaboard. I'm Allison Lee, your host here at craftcast.com. This is our 10th one, Fun at 1, free fun webinars where, you learn something new, something fun, get some coupons, find some links to fun things, have a good time, and get to relax from anything else going on in the world. Because as we know around the world, it's been a tad bit stressful. And if you're a crafter, you know that doing something fun and shiny and creative is a great way to just escape for a little bit from all of the above. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I send you out a big hug, and I'm always glad to see new names, old names. It's just a wonderful thing. So let me just go over a few of the tech things so you all know what's going on. A lot of you, hi, Miss Pope. A lot of you already see where your chat box is. You can ask questions during the whole presentation, and I'll read them out loud. And if for some reason we don't get to your question, just email us at support@craftcast.com. Sally there, my soul sister, will answer all questions, or we'll get answers for you. So not to worry about that. First, let me show you a little bit about CraftCast. If you haven't been over to the site, you probably have been, but if you haven't, we have all kinds of fun things for you to do here. The classes are just, we have amazing teachers from around the world. So check out all the different fun classes. If you want to go to a category, you can just click in here and find right away a category. Live classes coming up still. We're adding more all the time. There's so many good ones coming up. I can't stand it. I was trying to get one more to add today, but it's not ready yet. But if you saw Deb Karash, was anyone on when Deb Karash did her Fun at One demonstration and her metal flowers she does? Okay, she just finished all the videos for her class, but I don't have it up for sale yet. You're going to love that. This is coming up this Saturday. I flipped out with this ring. Barbara Becker Simon, we all love Barbara Becker Simon, is showing how to make it out of metal clay and then add flowers that you make with shrink dink material, because we've had demos on shrink dink. This is too much fun, just saying. Then we have, of course, Ms. Cynthia Tinapple, who's showing how to make great. If you've never done polymer clay, just sign up for this. I love the project, and it's easy and fun. If you want to try something beginner new with metal clay, Julia Ray from England, genius classes. So many fabulous classes she has over at CraftCast. And she wanted to do something that was an easy way in, not spending a lot of money on clay. So she did these charms, and they really are all summertime charms. Adorable. Another ridiculously fabulous polymer clay class with Sarah Shriver. Sarah did also a Fun at One where she demonstrated how underneath these polymer clay veneers, which is just basically a coating, think like how they veneer wood or any of that, she showed how you carve this ultralight, which was just so much fun. That's coming up. And of course, Hadar Jacobson, she's doing a Room with a View from metal clay, these 3D pendants and things. Genius. So, but always check back because we're adding new ones all the time, as fast as our little fingers can code everything. And then, of course, we have in the video tutorials done ones where you can go in, you can get all the past Fun at Ones. And if you add them to your cart and you didn't buy anything else, don't worry, it doesn't ask for a credit card or anything. It's free. It'll let you check out with just free things in there. And then afterwards, just go up here right to your library where it says My Library, and that's where you'll watch everything. You build your own online library with all the videos and the downloads, and some classes come with files and all that kind of stuff. So you can see everything in here. I haven't even done the email yet. This is brand new from Pam East. This is the Easy Metal Clay leaf pendant. Adorable. If you just want to give metal clay a try and you haven't yet. So many fun things. Last week we did these paper flowers. So freaking adorable. They're all great. I just love all these classes that people do and all of these teachers. So check that out. And then what else did I want to show you? Oh, of course I want to show you. Wait, let me put this over here for 1 second. Write down the coupon code. We just extended the 30% off. Normally it just runs for a week when we start the new season, but because we're all living in a crazy world, why not be able to buy more classes? So 30% off coupon code, spring 2020. And whoever told me last week, who is adorable, when I sent out the email reminding everyone, I said the coupon code is good through April. And someone wrote in and said, Allison, I love all the classes and all of that, but just so you know, it's May now. So I'm like, you're right. There you go. So it's still good through May. And let's see. Boop, 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 boo. Oh, I want to show you. Where did it go? Oh, I want to show you this. Okay, Cool Tools. I know a lot of you know Cool Tools. Cool Tools is sponsoring us today, and we love Cool Tools. I would never have for a sponsor someone I didn't love already. So here you go. They're great. They carry so many of the supplies we use. Check them out. They are sending out supplies still. Their customer service is fabulous. We love them. They do lots of different promos. Get on their mailing list. They do lots of promos with free shipping, different things. So make sure that you check them out. We highly recommend them. They're fabulous to get your supplies with. So that's that. And okay, so before I introduce today's fearless leader, this is the project. I fell in love with this. It's a metal embossed trinket box. I mean, freaking adorable. And then after Ms. Elitia Hart shows us how to do that, I'm going to show you how I took some of the weeds outside and put them into Plaster of Paris and just made these fun, playful things to make, really simple with probably, 50 cents worth of supply costs in there. So very exciting. But back to here. All right, I want to show off this woman's work. Elitia Hart. What a beautiful name. Look at some of the things she has in her gallery. Hello, adorable. I fell in love with all of her work. And guess what? She promised to do a class with us coming up soon with a big project. So we're very excited. So look at all this. It's embossed. That's embossed pewter, right, Elitia?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is hand embossed.
I mean, so cute. There's so many things. I'm going to show you her site also in 1 second before she starts, so you can go over there. I love this tissue box. Love, love, love. But let me show you also. This is her site. Let me put her site in here, the link, so everyone can go to there and check it all out. There's all kinds of fun things to look at, but I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to want this link because Elitia put together if you go down here, a kit for today. So to get most of the stuff you'll have, I swear you will, because I know people like us. But she put together a little kit that you can purchase from her to buy the things that you probably don't have. I'm going to put that link in here right now. So just saying, because it's really cool. All right, so with no further ado, we're going to work on this box. Oh, wait, let me just show everyone what's in the kit first so they just know. That's what it looks like. You get, let's see, the trinket box, the lead-free pewter sheet, some adhesive to attach it, the foam mat, the brass brush, the Teflon tip tool, the plastic eraser tool, and the paper stump. Okay, it's so much fun. All right, Elitia, thank you so much for showing this. I'm going to bring up your video on this and just take it away and tell us how to make this adorable box. And thank you again for doing that for us.
Thank you, Alison, for having me. And this is a this is a learning experience for me as well. Usually my videos are pre-recorded with audio, and I can and ahh my way through this. So this is great. We live and learn. This is awesome. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure.
So my name's Elitia. I'm a metal art instructor and a mixed media explorer. And we'll talk real quick. I'm trying to line up my talking to the video, but I'll quickly run through the supply list of things that we'll be using today. So our end product is going to be a little trinket box. I always like making things or doing metal embossing and actually having it end up being something. So we'll be using some basic tools. For the metal, we have our pewter sheet. You'll see that it's marked on the back with a little line. I'll explain a little bit more about that. We have some adhesive tape sheet. I use the Sukwang tape. And then, of course, our little tin, any tin for that matter. The important thing is always just to rough up that surface of the tin when we do use the adhesive tape sheet so that it has some tooth to it. Then the basic tools, paper stump, sorry, Teflon, my little plastic eraser tool, which is my one and only favorite tool, paper stump, and then a Teflon tip tool. That's really, in essence, just a plastic tool that slides over the metal really quickly. We'll use some craft foam. I included some craft foam into the kit. Scissors, sanding block, and some some painter's tape to attach the template of the butterfly once we've done the stamping. So the stamps are some border stamps. I also used Stampender's butterfly stamp. You can use obviously any butterfly stamp or any other stamps that you have. This might just, you know, open up a whole new world of those stamps that have been collecting dust in your drawers.
I agree.
So what works, and what works well for the centerpiece is a stamp that has nice details, but also has simple outlines. And you'll see that how helpful that is when we do the video. So one of the stays on black ink is the ink that I use that, true to its name, it stays on the metal very well. You know, it stays on. Sometimes when you want to get it off, it stays on. So for the purpose of this project, it works great. And then as a filler, because of the time constraint, I usually use melted beeswax. This is just a little electric skillet that I got from Amazon. It's called 7-inch electric, I don't know, personal skillet. It works great for crafts, and I just use it dedicatedly for my wax. Now I don't cook any eggs in it. And then I use a glass dropper, and I'll show you a little bit more. And then once the project is done, and actually midway, once we've stamped it, the suggestion is that you would seal it with a spray lacquer. If you want a kind of a matte look, I use a satin. If you want glossy, obviously you'll use a glossy finish. And this is just a brand that I get at Home Depot or Lowe's, or it's the home, you know, the home brand or whatever. It's nothing fancy. You can go very expensive with the lacquers, but this is kind of my go-to. And then we'll use some alcohol inks today. My favorite, I've lined up my favorite colors there, and I've got them in the handout. So we've got lettuce, butterscotch, etc. But what I love about the alcohol inks is that they stay transparent. I use as a palette, I use some juice can lids.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Just really needed one, but I had them all out. Okay, so as far as surfaces go, I guess we'll just stamp the pewter first, and then I always mark the back of my pewter with a line. So if you ever purchase pewter from me, there is a back and a front, and the back is always lined, because once you start cutting it, you don't know what's the back and what's the front.
Okay.
And then stamp you know, I'm not a stamper, so I don't want anybody to criticize my technique, but I just get the ink onto the stamp and you know, close up your inks, put it down, and then just pat it down. And the next thing that I did after I stamped the butterfly is I stamped it onto paper, the same stamp, and then cut it out so that I have a mask that I can put over the butterfly to protect that stamp from the background that we'll be putting on it. And another thing that I'll just mention now that I think about it is usually you have to wait for these things to dry, kind of, you know, at least give it a minute or so. I got a little carried away here because I got my videographer just for limited time, and he was like, I'm you know, getting hungry. I want to go have lunch. And I'm like, dude, hang in there. We'll get this done. You know. So normally I would suggest that you wait in between stamping to just make sure that
It's
the ink is
dry.
dried, and it
Okay.
dries fairly quickly. So
Okay,
I
good.
got a little rushed there. And then the background stamps, and these are all marvelous stamps from Stampendous. In the handout I did list them. I'm very bad at keeping track about what stamp is from where, but thankfully they had it on the actual stamp. When you're doing the backgrounds, you can certainly mask off other areas as well, and then stamp over it so that you don't want to bleed over some of the background there. So if I wanted to just make sure that I got a certain block of the ink transferred onto the metal, I could have put other pieces of paper there just to mask off the areas where I didn't want the ink to go.
Got
But I
it.
got a little, yeah, it looks like
I love
I'm
how
on a
I wouldn't
roll
have
here.
thought of doing that, just little bits of all your stamps. That's what looks so
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Yeah, and I did a bit of a better job on um, the sample, the previous sample, because I masked it a little bit better. And
Okay.
just keep that in mind, because you can definitely control it a little bit better where the stamps actually end up transferring the ink. And just there's so many possibilities with stamps on metal. It's a way of transferring design and keeping design. I mean, we can all trace, but we can also not it's out there. Let's just use these wonderful designs that
Oh,
people
yeah.
have created for us, and we certainly have one or two in our stash at home, I'm sure.
I know. How many people have some stamps? Right in. I just want to know how many people have some in their stash. Because I know that they do. Tons. Yeah.
Yeah, and
People are
I
writing
never did
tons.
paper paper stamping, and I always said, when a friend of mine introduced me to stamping, I'm like, I'm not going to get into this whole stamping business. And what do you know,
I know.
1 2 3 4 5 6 stamps later, and if you can stamp it on metal, I'm your girl,
Well, they're
right?
very seductive. They're lovely designs. Everyone's
Mhm.
writing in hundreds, tons, many, got them. So,
One or two, yeah.
yeah.
So now we'll
Look
remove
at
the
that. I love
mask.
that.
Yeah, and there we go. And we have our
Beautiful.
little butterfly stamp. And again, I'll just remind you guys to allow it to dry. And what we'll do now is we'll start doing the metal embossing. So we'll place the piece of pewter on our foam mat, and
Okay.
that's just a soft craft foam that allows the metal to stretch. And I'll do the basic outlines of the butterfly. You can see as I'm doing it that the metal already stretches into
Mm-hmm.
the foam, and that is the start of your high relief. And high relief is really just, you'll see when we push it up from the back on the soft, that it allows the metal to stretch.
Elitia, how
So
long would it be if your videographer wasn't hungry? How long should you wait for it to dry?
at least about 10 minutes.
Okay, 10
And you
minutes,
can
fine.
even
Okay.
take a heat gun to it,
Okay.
like
Okay.
that.
That's
That
not
always
long.
sets. No, not that long. But yeah, I was on a time
You're very
time
cute.
constraint. Okay, and then with the little antlers, antenna, sorry, I just went straight over um, the line, so that when I turn it around, I could see from the back where those antenna were.
Okay.
And again, we're just on the soft mat again from the back. And now we're going to take our Teflon tip tool and just push up against the inner line of the antenna. And you'll see I'm doing it right alongside that.
Now, what
And
tool is that you're using right
that's the
there?
Teflon tip
It is.
tool. So
Okay.
you'll see that's the one that we pretty much use all the time. And then
Okay.
I placed it on the hard surface, and you refine on both sides of the raised line. I'm not sure if you're able to see, but that line is now raised.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
on the hard surface, you refine on both sides, because it crisps up the line and makes it nice and neat. So we're going to go back on the soft mat, and just on the inside of that original line that we created from the front, we're pushing up against that line. And what that does, it starts stretching out the metal to the front. So we're not creating any new lines. You almost have that initial line. Guide your tool as you push up against it. And that's the first kind of already allowing the metal to stretch to the front.
Hmm.
And with a bit of a, I always call that a bit of a fire break, because as you do that inner line or refining on the inside of that line, it stops the embossing from kind of bleeding over the lines, if
Okay.
I can put it that way.
Okay.
And then so just on the inside of the original line, and you see that we had a lot of things going on the stamp on the front, but we're really just using the basic outline of that butterfly without getting into all the details and things like that right now. So a really quick and easy way of already creating some shape to the pattern. And then just on the inside of the little body, I used my Teflon tip tool again. And then as I was doing that, I realized that I'm having a hard time getting those circles done. So you'll see me scratch a little bit off screen for my ball tool. But you can certainly do it without a ball tool as well, for
Okay.
sure. And again, just going back on the front, and I'm taking my plastic eraser tool and just pushing along the edges of the design so that I don't disturb my stamping too much. Normally, I could use my paper stump for that, but this little tool just helps me kind of crisp up the background so that when you flatten the background, the embossed parts already start popping up a little bit more. And so I got in there with my paper stump and then realized I was probably going to rub off all my ink. So I kind of rethought that. So now
So that would have rubbed off some ink. Okay.
that would have rubbed off some ink.
Okay.
So now we're back on the soft mat and we're using our paper stump, which is, you want to have a paper stump that's kind of grubby and soft. And how I usually, when they're brand new, they kind of make scratch marks. So I soften up usually my paper stump with a little bit of Vaseline and run it over some sanding paper, just so that it softens the point. And because of the way that the wings of the butterfly goes, I kind of just did lines from the inner body out and just rubbed it onto the faux mat, and you'll see how it already started stretching the metal to the front. So I'm using my ball tool here on the soft mat, just because it allows that little head to be a little rounder. And I'm also using the ball tool as a larger embossing tool, so that when you turn it around, you can see that the little body is getting nice and rounded then, and then go back again and just flatten the background. And that is key for getting nice, neat work. Always on the hard surface whenever you're working on the background. So you're on the front of the metal, flatten that background, and you'll see how your little design just starts taking shape and already creating some volume to it.
That's great. You know, someone just said, I think, Julie, you could do it. If you put a permanent marker in a silhouette machine or a curio machine, you could maybe draw on your metal from a design you did from a machine.
Absolutely. Oh, wow. What a clever idea.
I know. These people are good.
So and when you look at you...
No, go ahead.
When you look at your little design and you see, oh, well, I would like those wings to pop up a little bit more, you'll put it back on the soft mat, obviously upside down, and then use that paper stump again and just create more volume. So you can go back and forth. But the idea is to go back and forth so that you allow the metal to stretch gradually. You see me pushing down on the wing there. So that's to show that the reason why we need to use a filler, because if we didn't use a filler and I pushed it down, obviously it would collapse. So we're at the stage where we're using a filler, and I've warmed up my beeswax, and I just use pure natural beeswax. Don't confuse this with paraffin wax, because paraffin wax will not stick to the metal. It'll just, as soon as you turn it around, it'll just pop out. You just made a mold of a butterfly. So when I use the warm wax, I heat up my little glass dropper, and I'm a little shaky, so I always hold my hand down, too many cups of coffee, and I squirt, and I always say I squirt and I drive. So I squirt the wax out, and you only want to fill up to the edge of the metal. You don't want to fill it up so that it raises too far above the the edge of the metal. And of course, we don't need to put any filler into the little antenna because they just low relief lines and they'll stay in shape. So the rule of thumb is if you were to push on something from the front and it would collapse, that would mean that it would require some filler. And
Got it.
for you guys that are in the warmer areas like Arizona and Australia, etc., there are other options for fillers. You can use spackle, you can use something like even glossy accents or Mod Podge dimensionals or something like that. The
Okay.
only thing is it needs to take a few hours to dry, and knowing my timeline, I'm usually way too impatient. So you can see that the wax is already cooled off. The minute that it's cooled off, it changes color and it becomes kind of a little bit duller.
Mm-hmm.
And now I want to add a little bit of a texture around the edges there with my texture wheel. And there's lots of marvelous texture wheels out there. And if you guys look in your sewing kits, you'll probably find a marvelous tracing wheel that you got when you were
When you were making
if you ever did
patterns.
sewing. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
perfect. And when I use the the tracing wheel, I always do it on the paper pad. It's like the Goldilocks pad, and a paper pad is just 5 sheets or so of construction paper or paper. That allows the little texture wheel just to get a nice indentation,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but not too hard. I'm very heavy-handed, so I always have to be a little bit cautious when I work with my texture wheels. And we did it as an engraving, so I did it right on the surface of the metal. And now I'm just giving myself a little drunk line on the inside of the texture wheel. And you can see that I'm not using rulers. I really just want to be a little bit loose about things. When I initially did metal embossing, I was very kind of trying to get things perfect, and it took away so much of the joy of
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I just did a little freehand line on the inside there just to give it a bit more texture and some interest. You can also, because you already have the wax underneath, you can now, if you wanted to add some of the details of the butterfly, you can press into that and add some engraving to that. I just did a couple to show you, but I didn't get, I could go ahead and do all of those lines, but just so you can see, because you have the wax underneath as a resist, you can engrave some of those details if you have time. So I'm going to attach the double-sided adhesive tape. You can certainly use things like Aleene's tacky glue that you can get at Walmart. You can use a contact glue. I just find that most of the time I have more glue in my hair, glue on my other projects, and so on. So the double-sided adhesive tape is very helpful. But of course, if you don't have that, you can certainly use glue. And I always cut off if I a little bit of the excess tape over the edges, just cut that away. Otherwise, it becomes a bit of a sticky mess when you put it on the tin there. So one of the things that what I like about using this little project on the tin is that because the metal is so shiny and your tin is shiny and you put that on there, it looks like it's part of the tin.
Yeah,
so
it does.
Kind of
it does.
marries very well with the project. I had already sanded up the little tin, make sure that it has some tooth to it. That also helps the adhesive tape adhere very well. And that tape, let me just give you guys a heads up. Once it's down, it's down.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
don't put it down and then
That's it.
try and bring it up again. Just live with it. I give myself, usually stand up and look from the side. And then you want to burnish it around the edges very, very nicely. I use the side of my paper stump or my other little plastic eraser tool. And it's almost like, I wouldn't say how you hold a potato when you peel it. You kind of want to just go around the edges and go around and go around. And the more you work with that metal, the better you got to go around and come around again, because the more you burnish it down, the better kind of the adhesion is, and it just becomes part of the little tin. So I
It
get down there
totally
and
does. That really makes it look
yeah,
like
you
it's
have
part
to
of it.
do the work. You
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to just go around, and then I didn't show it here, but you take a soft cloth after you've done that and just gently make sure that the adhesive tape in the middle where the little butterfly is attaches nicely to the tin as well. But the more times you can go around and do the work and have a neat project, that is key for me. I always
Okay.
feel that, if you're going to do the work,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Don't skimp on that, because you don't want that stuff to start peeling away later on. So our little project is coming together. The next thing that we'll do, and I stepped outside and I sprayed it with the clear lacquer,
Okay.
and I chose a satin because I didn't want it to be super glossy. If you want it more matte, you can use matte, or if you want it super shiny, you can use glossy. But I stepped outside and I sprayed the ink with that to seal it. Now, the important thing is when you spray, this is how I demo. You go,
Got
you
it.
don't go,
Got
because
it.
your alcohol, your inks will start bleeding. So
Okay.
I often have people saying, I did this and my whole design went away. And I'm like, oh my word, you gotta be a light
Light touch,
coat of,
just
yeah. And I mean, the more times you can give it a little light coat, if you have time, you can, half an hour later, give it another coat. And I usually sort of spray in different directions. So if I did one coat this way and
right.
I have time to wait for another coat, I do it the opposing way, just to make sure that I got it all. So those are my alcohol inks that we'll use. And I've got them listed in the handout, but kind of those are my go-to colors. The butterscotch, poppy field, lettuce, and denim. And
I think I have them all. They're my favorite too. Those are all Tim
great.
Holtz's inks.
Yeah, I mean, they just fabulous to work with on the metal, because you'll see that they have this transparency, and then the stamp, the wonderful lines of the stamp is still showing through. So what I did here, and I think my videographers sped this up, I do like a little pat. I don't want to make it into a painting project per se. I just wanted to have a little bit of color. I always love having green in my projects. I don't know, it just makes me happy. It makes it look a little bit more, nature and things that make us happy. So what I'm doing is I'm really just doing a little pat of color with my um, paintbrush there, and I try and repeat color. And I'm not very good at explaining design, but you kind of get, I like having a bit of repetition. And
Mm-hmm.
somebody once
Mm-hmm.
said to me, just do uneven numbers. I'm sure most of your
Mm-hmm.
your
Mm-hmm.
ladies that have done many different crafts, uneven numbers works for me. So I usually try and have a little green here, a little green there. Sometimes I don't stick to the rules, but however it feels, you'll get a sense of what works. The other thing that you'll see me do is I don't clean my brushes when I use the alcohol inks. I kind of just go with the flow. I don't mind that the colors run into each other. And if you've worked with alcohol inks before, you know that they have a way of just running into, and that kind of sometimes works well. Sometimes it turns to mud, but we'll work with that. I just
Oh, I
like,
love how you use the color and they ran with each other.
yeah, and there's a nice transition specifically, especially for a butterfly. There was a
Mm-hmm.
nice
Mm-hmm.
transition with it. Um, so here again, please make sure that your alcohol inks are dry before you start messing with it,
You're funny.
because you'll get a lot better scratching
Got it. Okay.
when the design is dry, when the alcohol inks are dry. And I definitely, I should have waited for this to dry, but I'll hope you guys will learn from my mistakes. So um, I was blowing on it, but obviously it wasn't.
So you're bringing the silver back in, you're saying. You wait till
I'm
it's
bringing
totally
the
right, and you're
silver back in,
scratching
so
it
I
off.
have a little
Okay.
brass brush there,
I see.
and I wanted to just take off some of the color that's so extremely vibrant. If you look at the other sample that you showed at the beginning, you'll see everything is a lot crisper because, what do you know? I waited in between
Got
to
it.
to
Okay.
make sure that everything dried nicely and so on. So here I got a little carried away, but one of the things, if any of the viewers are like me, I'll scratch away and then I might add some ink again and scratch some more. And wherever you've scratched, if you add another color, that color is a lot more vibrant, obviously, because you're back on the silver and
Got
of the
it.
pewter
Okay.
sheet again. Yeah. So a little scratching away there. And if you have a nice sharp little like a needle tool or some other, like even a nail, like a sharp nail, that is so great for getting into like details. And if you look at the other sample, you'll see much better scratching. And of course, like I said before, the scratchings were done once that was done.
All right, let's look at that other one.
Once that was dry.
I
Sorry about that.
love
Yeah.
that, the scratching. All right, here's a great question. Who just asked that? And I said, I'm going to ask it. Oh, Amelia
Mm-hmm.
said, is the satin clear coat necessary or can you leave that off? Oh, I see the scratchings now, what
You
you mean.
you
Okay.
can, yeah, you can certainly do that. I kind of found that so this little project, I didn't do the satin coat in between. I stamped these and I allowed them to dry, and
Okay.
that's the marvelous thing about Stays On ink. If you do take the time to let them dry, and you start doing scratchings and stuff like that, the ink stays on. You shouldn't agitate it too much, so when we start painting on Stays On ink directly with alcohol inks, it might move the design, the stamp design.
Okay.
And sometimes I find people get so excited about adding the color that they start agitating the ink, the stamped ink, and then things things get a little muddy out
Okay.
there. So you can skip that step if you apply some caution to when you apply the alcohol inks.
Got it. Good question. Thank you for that. I
Mm-hmm.
love this. But I love this one too. I love the feeling of just the watercolor blue behind it that came
Yes,
out. I
and
mean,
that's the beauty of the alcohol inks. You can certainly achieve that lovely, loose, watercolor look. That's
mhm.
definitely what's always drawn me to the alcohol inks for adding color onto pewter sheet.
That is gorgeous. It looks vintage to me already, especially when you add the scratching and everything.
Yes.
It's really gorgeous. And that's just 4 alcohol inks there, correct?
That was just 4 colors.
Wow.
I always try and limit my palette, otherwise it ends up looking like a fruit salad. So you always want to not get, try and stay. If you can limit yourself
Yeah,
to three
no,
or four colors, that's not a bad idea.
it's good to see. I think Tim Holtz, they sell those in packages of 4 that have a theme to
Hmm.
the colors, like
Yes. Yeah.
forest or ocean or something like that. So,
Yeah.
oh my God, those are so freaking gorgeous. Now, did you spray it again at the end or
I
no?
did.
You
I did
did.
spray it
Okay.
again and again, just a reminder, a light coat, because
Okay.
there is something in the spray lacquer that I'm sorry, I'm not a chemist, but I don't know what it is. But if you are a little heavy on the spray, it will lighten your alcohol ink.
Got it.
So a
Okay.
very light coat of that. And sometimes I would do projects and I won't spray it again, but it's if it's something that's going to be handled a lot, like a little trinket tin, spray it again because it'll protect your artwork, and especially things that where it will rub off, where you
Yeah.
open the tin and close the
Yeah.
tin
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So always good idea to just seal your work, and then um, then it'll stay nice for the longest time.
I love it. Okay, all of you women and men who are on and are using silhouettes and crickets, what do you think of doing your design with the Stays On ink? I've never worked with that kind of ink before, but how genius would that be, right? Anyone who's listening. What did you say? Mr. Robert said it's lacquer thinner. See, he's smart. He knows this. He said, Robert Danzig said it's lacquer thinner in the thinner in the lacquer that'll corrupt the ink. So that's what happens. So there you go. There's always a chemical reaction.
I didn't know why it happened, but
now we know.
It happened.
Thank you, Mr. Danzig.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Let's see. Do you make Pam, go over to her site and look at everything she makes. I would say that Elitia has, well, I showed you in the beginning. I mean, now look back at this box so you can start understanding what she does and how she combines everything. We've just only seen the tip of your iceberg of what you do.
You know, I initially, when I started doing metal embossing about 21 years ago, I was very much a purist. I did pewter, and that was, you know, it was pewter, and I would frame whatever I made, or and then later on, I do have a little bit of art attention deficit. You know, I wanted to do mixed media, but I always wanted to stick a piece of metal on it. So initially, I was just so in love with this process. Prior to that, I'd done a lot of different crafts like fabric paint and decoupage and stained glass. And then when I was introduced to this by a lovely woman in Hart Bay in South Africa, it was like, an aha moment. It was like, oh man, I have come home. But then you always want to explore other things in mixed media. And that's the wonderful thing about the pewter sheet. You can combine it with so many different things that you're already doing. You can make little blocks and include it in mosaics. You can make you know, you see that if I threatened my husband, if he stood still long enough, I was going to stick a piece of metal on him as well. So, you know, it always, because the metal is so soft, it always needs a substrate. So it doesn't stand up on its own. It's not cast pewter. It always needs a base to make it rigid, or and that kind of always makes you look around at boxes and frames and you know, all kinds of things that you can add that to. And I always love exploring other mediums like polymer clay. But when I start out designing a project, I always think about where will the metal come in. You know, like I kind of think of the metal, and then I think of the polymer clay. And like this little one, I really wanted to use the polymer clay. So the top part of that is polymer clay stamped on with inks and things like that. But so I get to play with a lot of different things, and then the challenge is to marry different mediums so that, you know, I could still say, oh yeah, I'm still doing metal, you know, and not get too far distracted from doing that.
It's totally exciting here. I think it is very similar to like a repose look, Julie. I think, yeah, I agree with you. And Katie said, multiple artist discipline disorder. You're very funny, Katie.
I'm going to write that down, because I always
that's good.
Justify my, you know.
And yes, we're with our people here. We don't have to worry. We don't need excuses for that.
Don't have to make excuses.
No, not
here.
You
know, and I'm always working on the next thing, thinking of the next one. I'm also born in June, and I kind of get bored really quickly. So I want to always create something new. So once I've done it, I'm okay. Let's
the next.
What can I do now?
We're very excited to see what you're coming up to teach us next. Is all I can say. Very exciting. Everyone loves this. Now wait, let me take another. Harriet wants to know: do you cut your own pewter sheet?
Yes, okay. I do cut my own pewter sheet, and it's very easy to cut.
Okay,
so
great.
You can cut it with an X-Acto knife. I obviously have some big cutting mat, self-healing cutting mat. You can cut it with scissors. Yeah, it cuts beautifully. I use a Stanley knife most of the. You guys know what a Stanley? It's like a heavy duty box cutter.
Right. The box cutter.
Yep. And I use a L-shaped ruler, and then try and cut straight. And you can paper cutters. Oh my word! If it wasn't for a thing like a paper cutter, and I'm not a paper artist, but paper cutters are fabulous.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
For getting straight cuts, because that is always the challenge when you're preparing kits, is making sure that everything's cut. One of the things I just wanted to quickly say about the little tin, you would have seen that the corners were rounded. So I used a cutter that rounds corners. Somebody gave it to me who does scrapbooking. So it
Oh,
rounds.
okay. Okay.
You
And
you you. It's
scrapbooking.
a
Okay.
punch
Mm-hmm.
that
I know
you
exactly what you
use
mean.
in paper crafts, and
Mm-hmm.
I honestly have had that little doodad for about 15 years and have never used it on paper. So
I know
you
exactly
can
what you
see it
mean. And then
nicely. You pop your
mm-hmm.
square pewter in there, and you give it a little
Cut a little corner.
punch,
Yep.
and then it rounds the corners for you.
Holy moly. Okay, I know someone's already writing in. They already bought the kit. Wait, let me show that again. So here's the little kit. I put the link in there. Didn't I put the link in here? Wait, let me bring it up again so I can, where you can get that basic little kit to get going, which is fun to have. So I'm putting that in there for everyone. And we're very excited that Ms. Hart's going to come and teach us a full class too. Your work is lovely. We love it, love it, love it. Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much. This
It's
is so fun,
is
and
I know,
um,
right? It's really we have a good time. Let's just see if there's any more questions. I know I love the hot box, Monica. Isn't that adorable? Will the kit ship to Canada? Mm-hmm.
oh, I am in Canada,
Right.
and I ship pretty much everywhere. And if you do happen to want to purchase something from me, I do limit. There are some countries that I don't ship to because I can't track the parcel, and that's kind of it worries me when I send parcels and I don't know if you're going to receive it and so on. So, but send me an email, and we'll figure something out.
Cool. Very cool. All right. All right. So we have just a few more minutes here. Any other questions, just email to us. I'm just going to show you another quick little presentation. I just thought, okay, so I've had a childhood love of Plaster of Paris. Don't judge me harshly. I just thought, like, wow, you add water and it gets hard. So I thought, what can I make with Plaster of Paris? All right. So this is what I did. Um, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So there were weeds outside. I was very inspired, Elitia, by your box and all the colors.
Oh, super.
So I thought, let me just take the weeds, see what I can come up with. All right, so I did this and this, and I'm going to show you how much fun and easy this is to do. So here's what I did. I took that air dry clay. That's the cheap, cheap, cheap kids clay. Now, in retrospect, I probably would have wanted the white kind, but then it ended up that the terracotta was sort of cool too. And all I did was roll out this clay to, I don't know, quarter-inch thick. This is again very loose. And I went outside and just picked a bunch of the little weeds that were growing, and I put them down in the clay. And I just arranged it in a little something or other. And then I put a little piece of wax paper on top, and I used a little roller right there on the side, and I rolled them in. And then when I took up the wax paper, I sort of peeled away all the flowers, and I'm like, okay, so I got a pretty good impression there. And then I made, you can see, a little dam around the whole area with some more clay, just because I'm going to pour plaster of Paris in there. I did another one, and this is close up, and I thought, wow, that's just that little weed. It really made a very deep impression into this clay. Here it is even closer, and you could see a lot of detail. All right, so then I found plaster of Paris. Just like Elitia was saying with her spray, she used your basic spray on top that's just from the hardware store. This is just that. Plaster of Paris, cheap hardware store, done. And I took out this is all you needed was a bowl. It's like, I think it's 1 cup. It's 1 to 2. 1 cup of plaster, 2 cups of water. And then I have a little video here just so you can see what it looks like when you stir it up. You just stir it until there's no lumps. It literally like a minute and a half, and it sort of looks like pancake batter when it's ready. And I just stirred, stirred, stirred. I'm like, okay, this is good. You could probably tint it. You could probably for sure color it. I wanted to color after, so I just left it white. And you'll see what happens too with the clay that I use. So it sort of made it a little different. Okay, so then I took those molds and I took the leftover clay and I just made dams around it. Now, here's a tip. See how the one on the left is on some nice Teflon paper? Do that, because the one on the right stuck to the metal butcher tray. And when I tried to pick it up, part of it broke off. But then I just said, oh, what the heck? And I made the dam I just put the dam around the part that was still one piece, no biggie. And I poured the plaster of Paris in. I left it in there. I don't know how long it officially dries for. I think I might have left it overnight because I was doing it at night. And then when I took them out, here's this little small one. Okay, there was still some white clay on there, and the plaster of Paris picked up the terracotta stain in the clay, which at first I was like, why didn't I think of that? But then I liked it. Okay, it rubs off really easily. And look at that imprint. I mean, I was sort of blown away by how much detail there was on these. Okay, so then I just took out, which I learned from Ms. Claire Monsell, who has a wonderful class over at CraftCast on coloring polymer clay. I had some of these pen pastels. You could use anything. I happen to have these, just like everyone has like all their different dyes and all that stuff we have in our cabinet. I mean, we know we have coloring. So I just pulled these out and I thought, let me start coloring them. And then I forgot I even have it. These little Fantastics, they're just ways to do spread color around. I just started coloring in on top of the designs. And because there's that edge, you can sort of like remove color if it goes too far. Again, just what Alicia said before, this is just having fun playing around with it. So there's one finished. And then I did another. Here's a little more close up of that. Now, you can sort of see on this next one here, I just decided to take the gold, and I just took the gold all along the edge there. It looked really cool to just put the gold along the edge. Now I'm thinking like back here, I'm like, wait, I could probably, now I sort of like the terracotta clay because I thought it looked like the terracotta pots. And I thought, oh, I could display this in front of my, plant pots, or if I made them smaller, could I attach them? I started thinking of different ways to use it. But how much fun is that? This is really a project that cost, literally under $1. It's just the plaster of Paris and clay and weeds outside and then coloring with whatever you have. And I have to say, it was really fun. It was like having a 3-dimensional coloring book to play with. So I give that to all of you as something fun to do. They are great in the garden, right? They're really fun. Thank you, Mags. Great in the garden. I thought so too. Robert, you can add something called, oh, wait. Robert has some good advice here. Robert is saying you can add something called admix or underlayment sealer, and it makes the plaster 4 times harder and pretty much waterproof. Oh my gosh, that was one of my questions. How can I make it waterproof for outside? And by the way, the plaster is set when the heat goes away and it's cool to the touch. Robert, one of the many reasons I love you dearly. So did you hear that? Admix. I know I've heard Robert talk about that before because I thought, how cute would this be in the garden? Like, as you could put them and it could be the little, sign that said, whatever you were growing there. So thank you for that, Admix. And Robert, Admix is just sold in the hardware store in like a normal size container and not like 20 pounds or something. How do we buy that? Because that's be fun. And then do you even then have to, I guess you could then just do a sealer on it. Harriet's asking about a sealer at the end. I didn't seal them, Harriet, but now I would do this again with what Robert just said and admix in it. So it would withstand rain and all of that stuff as well. I hadn't figured that out. Then it'll make it waterproof for outside. All right, let's just see. You right, Georgie? Fun, right? Let's see. Did you have to dry the weeds? No, I didn't, Margaret. Great question. I literally went outside and picked the ones that I liked. These actually in real life were the ones that are just like white flowers. It was before they cut the grass and they're just really pretty. Thank you, Cindy. Robert does know everything. Robert, yes, or a big box store. Okay, so easy to get. You could add some stamps to this as well. Could you add? You could absolutely afterwards. I just was impressed with how well basic clay took weeds with so much detail. And Robert said, oh, it does come in quart sizes. Thank you, darling. Admix, ADMIX. So everyone knows. Is the admix added to the plaster of Paris? It is, right, Robert? And how would we know the proportions to do? Thank you, Margaret. How would we know those proportions, Robert? tell us, oh dear professor who knows all of this, right? Because I'm going to do more of them. I just also, what I loved was, if you saw, well, you did see that in person, what that flower was. Let me see if I can show you again. I mean, it was just green leaves. I made it more to look like a, no, I don't have the original of that, but you can see there, it was just some leaves. It wasn't a pansy beforehand. And I tried, you can see there, that's one of those dandelions that had turned to green, yellow had turned to the kind that you blow and wish on. So I was just playing around with that. Oh, and just so you know, if you didn't like something like in here, I covered something up with clay and just rubbed it in. I mean, this is one, talk about just forgiving and doing whatever you want. So, I mean, it's just sort of endless. Cheap clay, plaster of Paris. And I want to see what Robert said here. There are techniques for casting plaster called the island technique. Too long to explain here. Okay, thank you, Robert. So there we go. We're gonna look up the island technique, but now we know how to make it so it'll hold up outside. Could you use alcohol inks? Yeah, plaster. But you know what? I think if you use, here's the thing. I would probably use watercolor first. I just started playing around with the pastels because plaster of Paris is really porous. So if you put alcohol ink in, I don't think it would spread. It would just go right into that one spot, Hazel. So you could have played with kids' chalk. I had those pastels and I just started playing with that, or watercolors, paints. Oh, one other thing. So on this one here, like this one here is a lot more orange, and I let the terracotta color show through that was picked up from the clay. On this one here, I took cheap white paint on an old rag that was watered down, and I put that down first. That's why you see some of the white lines in there. I just rubbed old white paint on it and off of it to give that little highlight in there, which I thought was pretty cool. And you can sort of see it on the edges there. So that was easy to play around with and change the color. So obviously, if you used white clay, you wouldn't pick up the terracotta I did. But then once I did, I sort of liked it. So what can I tell you? I thought it was sort of cool. Let's see. Shoe polish works well on plaster. Wow, Robert, this is why we love you. With the admix, it shouldn't be as porous. There you go. So then you could probably do alcohol inks. I'd probably try them watered down a bit so you had more water to play with there. Angela, did you dry the air clay before you put the plaster in? Yes. But you know what? When I did leave it overnight to dry. But when I put the dams around like that, I poured the plaster in. Those were still wet. That didn't matter. Like right here, the dams around them were still wet because, truthfully, see right there, that big chunk? That's where stuff had fallen off. So before I pulled the plaster in, I just said, well, I'll just put wet clay. I'm just looking for a dam there, and that's all I did. So yes, the imprint was dry because I left that overnight, but the stuff on the outside didn't matter, still wet, held the plaster in. So it might be that you could have poured it in wet. I just waited because it was late. Let's see, Mr. Danzig, graphite and shoe polish can make it look like bronze. Oh, this is a whole thing. You're welcome, Angela. There you go, kids. We did it. Fun at 1, right? You have to send us pictures of everything you make, is all I can say. And then don't forget you have a coupon code, 30% off at craftcast.com. There's so many cool things coming up. Isn't it fun? Don't you feel like you had fun for a little bit? Elitia Hart, we love you. You were wonderful.
Oh, thank you
we
so
love
much
you.
for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Isn't it? Yeah. And we're so excited to see the next project we can do with you. Go get your kit. Yes, I know. She's brilliant. She is. Everyone stay safe. Aww. Yes. Everyone loved it. Thank you all for coming. It wouldn't be the same without you. You know that. So thank you for being here. We have another great Fun at 1 next week. Brenda Swader's coming on with her partner, and they are doing, I already saw they were like, they're doing hammered things, hammered earrings, hoops, fun stuff. The fun doesn't stop. You're welcome, everyone. Thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you all online again soon, and you will get an email sometime towards the end of the day with where to listen to the recording and all kinds of other goodies. So There you go, everyone. Thank you again, Elitia. I'm going to mute you now,
you're
and
welcome. Thank you so much, guys.
I'll be excited to work with you again. And don't forget, you also, in the handout, if you didn't grab it from the interface, the handout will be in your library when you get the recording as well, with the link for Alicia's store and all that kind of stuff. So, and if you can't find anything, you go, what? Where is everything? Just send us an email at support@craftcast.com. All right, everyone. Big kiss. See you all soon. Bye, Elitia. I'll mute you now, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Allison. Take care.
You too. And bye, everyone. Talk again soon.